Hi, I'm artist Lisa Christensen. I believe that everyone can learn to watercolor and that creating art and giving art is a twofold joy. When we paint joy, we give joy. In this video, I'm going to show you my first set of watercolor paints I've ever gotten. I had received as a gift 10 years ago and I still love them. They're the Kuretake Watercolor and they have stolen a piece of my heart. They are beautiful pigments and they are so fun to work with. In this video, I'm going to go over water to pigment ratio, watercolor play, how to get to know your pigments if they're brand new, how to flood watercolor for beautiful floral effects, and then how to paint this fun cactus pot for Valentine. Please like and subscribe to my channel if you found this video to be helpful. I really appreciate your support. Let's get started. Hi! My first watercolor palette that I ever got was this right here. It's the Kuretake Gansai Tambi Watercolor and I absolutely love it. It comes with a nice little mixing palette, but I actually find that a porcelain this is like a porcelain flower, but a porcelain plate is a much better option than that. And they're Japanese watercolors, so they're a little bit more opaque and they're just a lot of fun to use. You can see that I have used this a lot, and you can see that some of the colors I've used a lot and some I haven't, but I will share with you some of my fun ways that I like to use these. I love these for florals and I just love them. So a couple of things to note about the pigment is that it is a little bit opaque. Like you don't always see the white of the paper like you can. This is a very pinky red, and so I can see a little bit. There's a little bit of granulation, not a ton, but it's just a really beautiful pigment. Yeah. Some of the things that I like to do, this is a great practice for any like new watercolor. If you are looking to, if you don't want it that thick, you can always put some on a palette, add some water to it, and then you get a lighter look. This is a little bit lighter. You can kind of tell. And it's also a bit more juicier, but it'll dry lighter. And if you want an even lighter one, a lighter color, you just add more water and you get that same light. And I can go even darker. I can go very thick if I wanted to. So this is true for all watercolor, but you can kind of see the difference in the values. You got very dark, so I would consider this to be like a milk or a cream or a butter type consistency. This would be more like a milk kind of cream consistency, and then my tea where you can barely see it, but you can see that it's not white. And so when we understand our different water to pigment ratios, we can paint with light and dark values. So let me share that with you with purple. I'm just going to take this purple. It's number 38, and I will share with you my thoughts on how I like actually name my colors. So this would be like straight, if I just had pigment on my brush, straight from the palette. Now I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to add a little bit of water, and it just blends so beautifully. So that would be like my thickest value I can get. Now this would be like my milk. You can already tell that it's just a little bit lighter. I will zoom in for you. That's a little bit lighter. And then I can add some more water. I'm just dipping my brush in, and this will be more like the tea consistency, where it's just really light. And so you can see the different values. You'll be able to see a little bit better once it's dried, but you got a dark, medium, and light, and that's really what you can do with all your watercolors. So you can make another way that I've learned how to see how my values work is I do what we call, what Jean Haynes taught me this, the dancing ladies. So like if this is like her shoulder, I don't know, then let's make it really thick, And then I'm just gonna, there's maybe the head, I don't know, it doesn't matter. And then I'm just gonna dip my brush in with clean water, and I'm gonna let it kind of go down, and it's gonna look like maybe a lady dancing, maybe someone dancing. It's very abstract, but still it looks like it could be a figure. And she actually goes, I mean, we go all the way down. We want to see how the paint runs. And then I would do the same thing with that red that I did. So let's do that. There's the shoulders. There's my, and I would maybe go a little bit closer. Clean my brush, dab it off a little bit. We're gonna go into here. Maybe she has broader shoulders, and then we're gonna just see kind of how it makes. And we can even do that and see how that goes. And then we do that with all the different colors. And we call that Dancing Ladies. That is a Jean Haynes. I don't know if she can like patent in it, but it really does help with watercolor. Every student that I share this technique with really helps to learn watercolor. I'm just trying to get this orange to activate. Like I said, I don't want to do every single color for you, but I want you to see just how important it is to kind of blend your pigment on. And I probably next one I will do will be a yellow, and because it's so bright, I'm going with a very bright. I'm going to go with this this yellow. It is almost out. I have used this yellow a time or two, and I'm going to go ahead and go right in like that. I want to see how this yellow goes in with this orange. I'm going to let that go all the way down. And yeah, I just continue to do this. And this is the same technique that I would use for a rainbow. Like if you were wanting to paint a rainbow. And I will show you a way that I like to paint a rainbow with the metallic colors, with the jewel colors. And they're really fun. Anyways, I would keep doing this the whole time. Let's try this green. It's like a spring green. It's number 51 if you have it. It's very light green. In fact, I don't know if I would use this in my watercolor practice. Often I usually would mute it down with some red or something. But ooh, look at that. When it goes with the yellow, that is really pretty. I like the two together. Yeah, I don't love the green by itself, but I love it with the yellow. That makes a really pretty color. And so I would just keep going on and on and on. And they're called Dancing Ladies. And if you are used to blending your colors, this is a great way to get to know your colors a bit better. So that is a fun way to get to know how your colors blend together. Dancing Ladies from Jean Haynes. She does that, I think, in every single book I have of hers. She always references this little technique. So it's really fun to try it. And you could then, Jane Davenport is another illustrator that I follow. Once it's dried, she will actually like draw faces and like actually make like her fashion. Like they'll have like dresses and hairstyles, and it's so fun. But it starts with just a simple wash like this. Yeah. Okay, so some other watercolor techniques. I love the fluid exercise of this. I really truly hope that you try this if you're a new beginner. This will help you with water control and water to pigment ratio, and it's really easy to do. It's fun, especially if you want to draw figures or like to paint people. This could be really fun, and each one will look a little bit different. So let me share some other ways that I love using these palettes. And so I'm going to go with a darker blue this time. And a lot of times Japanese artists like to use, like, they like to draw with their paintbrush. So like we'll see them draw like waves, right? And you can get in lots of brushes, just brush strokes, and calligraphy. They love calligraphy as well, right? So you can do like the whole, you can put a lot of pressure down or like hardly any pressure down and get like a really pretty wave look. I always like making my waves like that, and then when the paint is still a little bit wet, I can kind of go in and just kind of soften like one side of the edge, and maybe I'll even soften the other side just a little bit. I don't need to soften it too much, but I want it to look like a beach. And then maybe I'd go in with a different color. I really like I like this green. Then maybe I would go in with this green right there. Maybe I'll do some seafoam too. I call this seafoam green. I don't know the actual color, but I love that color. And then maybe I need some more turquoise. But I mean, these, I love this paint because it's really easy to move on the paper. And I know that it depends on the paper. I'm using Canson 140-pound paper. It's pretty thick and it will definitely work for anything I need to do. I do love Arches. Arches is a little bit more expensive. But I do think it's worth using Arches. But oh, look at that, that's so pretty. And this is more like a wet onto wet because I already have the paper wet. This is wet right here, so will just kind of spread out. Water only goes where water is. So like there's this little bit of water, it's going to stay with the water. But if I did not want my lines to be softened by water, I can just use my lines like this, and it's not going to go anywhere because there's no water. There's only water on my brush. So depending on how thick or how the pressure of my brush will depend on how thick or thin my lines are. I'm barely putting pressure, and now I'm putting a lot of pressure, and so you'll see, and water will only go there, and I can even tip it and it will only go where the water is. And I just love that about watercolor. Okay. So some other techniques with brush handling is I like to use a dry brush, and I will fan it out like this. Ooh, right? It looks like a bad haircut. And then I will take maybe that same color, and there's a lot of color on it, so it's going to be very, but you can almost use it as a fan brush. This would be maybe some grass or something, and maybe these are mountains in the background. I don't know. Just playing. But dry brush can be like that, or you can take the whole barrel of the brush and just skim across the page and get some texture that way. And that works really well for washes. And let's see, there's one more technique that I love using with these paints, and that's called flooding. So for this example, I do a lot of florals, and I learned this from, I believe, Christy Rice. I took a class with her, and I just love her. But I'm just going to paint, I'm just going to draw some leaves. Nothing fantastic. And I'm going to, I start with my light value and then I go to my darker value. However, I'm going to go with like this really pretty dark green that I have. Anyways, it's number 50. It is number 50. And I am probably going to wish that I had water. Let's see how thick it is. It's not too bad. But we paint, this is not thick enough for my liking. It's going to dry way, way lighter. So I'm going to add a lot more pigment to it. This would be like a milk-like consistency. I'm going to do the same here. It is really dry. These poor pigments. It's very dry, so my pigments are really dry. Okay. And I always like to go with my brush, and I usually would use a bigger brush than this, but this is the one I grabbed. Alright, so I got a nice block of color. Now I cleaned out my brush, and now I just have water on my brush. I'm going to add some water to wherever the water is. And water goes where water is. And I don't really want that, so I'm gonna... Alright. Now that I got some water on it, I'm gonna add some more right over here. That one looks like there's some water. Now I flooded the pigment with water. Now what I can do with my brush is I'm going to soak up the water, and what it's going to do is it's going to leave some white of the paper just like that. You can kind of see it. I do this all the time with floral petals. And then on my napkin or my washcloth, I just empty this out. I just clean it up. And it's okay. The lines were just a guideline. They weren't like I had to stick to them. And in watercolor, that's how that works. So once I get it flooded, once I flood it with the water and then I soak up that water, I get this really pretty wet look. And now I can add whatever color I want. And I really am loving this like turquoise blue color, which I know is probably not very seen in nature. But then I could just kind of go in and just add a little bit of that right into it. And that's not true. I saw this beautiful plant that had this beautiful turquoise color in the middle of the leaf, and I thought that is so pretty. But it was at the Des Moines Botanical Center, but I have no idea what it was called. And I never asked and I never researched it, but it was this color and it was so gorgeous. And I thought, okay, if we can have blue leaves with green, that's pretty fun. And then something like that. Now I would let it dry, and then maybe I would go in and add a little bit more detail at the very end. And that is how I do my florals. And this paint, the Kuretake line of paint, is perfect for that. So give florals a try. Another way that I like to use Kuretake paint for florals is I just take a round brush or a oval brush, and I doodle flowers. Is that a thing? It's a thing for me, and I really enjoy doodling flowers. So if I were to doodle flowers, I'm going to take this normal shade of green, 52, and maybe I'll come over here and move some of the stuff so there's more room. Okay, so maybe what I will do is I will just make my flowers, my leaves right here, and I'm feeling rosy like, so I'm going to take my rose color number 36 and I'm just going to make a rose. I always do like an upside down C, and like I just do 2 C's and a middle whoosh thing. And then I'll take my brush and I'll add a little bit more pressure, something like this. And if I'm really good, I can use my whole brush for one single rose, and it just makes me happy. And I think that will work. Now I can clean my brush. This was just I did little C's all around, and I just used pressure on my brush to make it happen. And now I'm just going to add, wherever I don't want white is where I'm going to add my brush. And my brush is just damp. It's not wet. And I really like, while it's still kind of wet, I will go in with like a warmer yellow, and I will just add some yellow, especially to the middle. just to add some warmth to the rose. Something like that. And then if I lose, once it dries, I'm going to add more detail just like I would right here. And so florals are very fun. And I will often use a very dark green to just add detail, very simple detail. And that's too wet, so I'm not going to mess with that, but I could go in here and just add a little bit more detail there. And I like to doodle paint with my Kuretake watercolor set. So there's some ideas. I'm going to let that dry. I'll come back and add more detail on that rose. But it is so fun to play with your paints before you actually start painting. This was water ratio practice, so my thickest to my lightest, I kept adding water. This is just a fun play to see how the colors blend, and it's really fun. I can then, with my micron pen, I can doodle whatever, and I had some splatter, but that's okay. So I can say like, and then I know that my face, and then I also know that my bodies are like an upside down heart, like whoosh, like this, and then a right side heart, kind of like this, and then here's maybe the free dress or something, I don't know. And there's the hand. It doesn't have to, but maybe she has really beautiful hair. I don't know. And I need, maybe she has this really pretty V-neck dress on. Yeah. And then you just doodle the whole line, and it's just fun. You know, you can have your whole sketchbook with this. Maybe this one is looking this way, so maybe her hair is way down. There's her eye, there's an arm, maybe she just is walking, something to that effect, and then there's her other arm, she's walking. So anyways, it's just fun, doodle, and then you can also say like this was number 32, and this one was number 38. So then you can say, well, number 32 and 38, yeah, okay. So I kind of lost that line. I'm just gonna kind of go in wherever I feel like it. This is not rocket science or surgery by any means. I do always think that my petals at the end of my florals need to be kind of a little bit more defined. That's probably just me. And then I can go in and soften that one edge. Again, flooding and making it happen. I don't want to add a whole lot of detail, just enough for people to say, oh, that's a rose, or oh, that's a pretty flower, but it needs some form. So, okay, now I can go back in and get my red rose more defined. So I'm just going to go in, add a little bit of pigment. I don't need a whole lot. I'm just going to kind of go, it takes a little bit of practice. This did not come easy for a while. I think I spent like one whole year just painting roses like this. And so now I feel so much more confident in my roses. But it took me a while. And then I can just go in, and wherever I feel like there's too much, I can just lift it off. I always have a washcloth nearby. This is like the surgery part of my painting. This is like where I take my time. And then I'm done. And alright friends, so I am using a woodless watercolor pencil to just kind of sketch out my original design. I am a little bit loose with it, and I know that I want my pot to be about the right size. I have actually doodled this for about a week, so I feel pretty confident in my ability to illustrate this. It is a super fun little cacti or cactus, and I'm just gonna, like, I just made it into like a little heart-shaped cactus thing. I am going to put some tape underneath so it doesn't move around, and then we get started, and I'm just gonna double tape it. Alright, now that it is on my surface, I'm going to use a light green and use a very light wash with it so far. And I'm just going to block in some color. There's no real right way or wrong way. You don't want it to be too thick at this point. So more like a milk-like consistency. I'm just making sure that green is just really thick. Now I'm going to go in with my deeper green, and I'm just going to add some wet into wet darker green into it just to give it some form, just to give it some depth. And then I will be starting with my first layer is just a wash. While I am blocking in color, I am paying attention to my water to pigment ratio, and I realized that my pot needs to be a little bit darker because it's the light, like the pot just needs to be darker. And then I will also be mixing some brown with I will be using my purple and my green to just make this really kind of earthy brown, and there's a little bit of red into it because I know that red and green will make a nice neutral color, but then I also need it to be thick and darker, so I use a little bit of dark green, light green, and a little bit of red to make the dirt. And make sure that the green is totally dry when you start putting the dirt on. Otherwise it will start to bleed. Alright, once I let that dry, we are ready for the second. As I clean up my edges a little bit, I can then start on my second layer, but I wanted to make sure my edges are all cleaned up. Now it's dry, the bottom is dry, and I can start getting a deeper, darker, neutral brown with that green and red dirt color. And then I can also make my pot a little bit darker too. At this point I'm also splattering because I want to get like just a nice little watercolor effect. And I also want to be able to have headspace to stamp a sentiment. So what I'm doing now is I'm just going to freehand some hearts. I'm not always the best freehander, but that's okay. It's supposed to look kind of whimsical and cute, and it's for a Valentine's Day card, so I feel like part of me can get away with that a little bit. And you just saw me kind of use a bigger brush because the smaller brush was just not, it was not helping me. Sometimes as artists we use the biggest brush we can until we can't, and that's where I'm at with that. And I didn't want my hearts to be like all uniformed. I wanted the hearts to look like it was in a pot. I am now getting some light green on my brush, and I let that whole thing dry again. I'm actually getting, I'm cleaning up my edges, and so you'll see me kind of pick up some paint. I love this Kuretake it's pigment, this pigment, because the liftability is amazing. It just makes me so happy that I can lift out color. And now this is me playing around to see how I want my flower to be. I'm not actually using a reference photo. I'm just going from memory. That's a blessing and a curse at the same time. I kind of had an idea. So I like to paint from memory most of the time, just because it gives it more of a, I don't know, like there's a fun little, it doesn't have to be realistic look to it, and I enjoy that. And it's just fun, and it's a card, and it's going to probably my daughter because she loves all things botanical like. It's just fun. And so I'm just adding a deeper, this is like cream pigment right here at this point where it's really thick, and I just wanted to add some depth to those flowers. They are not realistic, that's not the point. Now I'm taking thick purple, like cream, like straight from the palette, and I'm just outlining those hearts just to give it a little bit more pizzazz. And then I am about done with it. And I wanted to outline just the top of the pot just to give it some more form. It needed a little bit more form, so I thought outlining it would be perfect. Once it's dried, I was able to stamp I love you with pea pod ink from Tailored Expressions and an I love you sentiment from Pinned Perfect stamp set. And I'm just trying to get an idea of where I want the sentiment. It takes a little bit of time. There's no right or wrong way, but I kind of wanted to play with the I love you part to get it just right where I want it to be at. And so I'm stamping that on my Misty on watercolor, and you'll see that I got a perfect impression. And you also see that I was going to cut that, crop it down. Sometimes when I illustrate, I don't always have the spatial awareness like I want. And then I'm just finishing up the card. If you found this video at all helpful, please like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much. Happy painting!